Hi, my name is Zachary Bowman. I'm the manager of education and visitor experience here at the Dorsky Museum on the campus at SUNY New Paltz. And I'm so excited to introduce today's speakers um, for this program, Art in the Environment of Resistance. So I'll start with Danny. Danny Peralta. Danny Ramon Peralta was born in the Bronx, New York City, of Dominican parents. He received his Bachelor of Arts in Education from New York University in 2000. Since then, he has dedicated his life to building community with youth and families, using the arts and leadership programming as a tool for addressing marginalization. Peralta is the current executive managing director at The Point, which is dedicated to youth development and cultural and economic revitalization of the Hunts Point section of the South Bronx. He is also an accomplished documentary photographer and artist in that community. His work is featured in the exhibition I mentioned earlier, Dos Mundos, Reconstructing Narratives, on view now at the Dorsky Museum, which features artists who have received fellowships from Foco, a not-for-profit that supports primarily contemporary US-based photographers of African, Asian, Latino, Native American, and Pacific Islander heritage. We're also very excited to have with us members from the group, the El Museo Escolar, which is a cultural club founded at SUNY New Paltz around the time that the Latin American and Caribbean Studies Department was created. They have their own museum on campus in the Student Union building, referred to as the Culture Center, which houses artifacts from all over Latin America and the Caribbean. Their organization aims to educate the campus community through the physical experience of culture, whether it's through viewing their museum or various programs such as hands-on cooking classes or attending their annual fashion show, which by all accounts is quite the event. I'm gonna welcome Jasmine, who's a member at El Museo Escolar, and Saul. And I think they'll talk for a bit, and then we'll hear from Danny, and it'll be kind of a casual conversation. I would say if you have questions, maybe put them in the chat window, and maybe we'll leave some time towards the end for a little bit more sort of casual Q&A with the audience and Danny and the students from El Museo Escolar. So welcome, and yeah, I'm gonna shut up now.
Thank you, Zachary, for that introduction. First, I want to say I'm so glad to be here. Thank you to Dorsky Museum. So glad to have Danny Peralta here as well. Danny Peralta's work at The Point, which he will discuss later on his own work towards community development and like social justice. And I feel like his work really shows why building an arts-based community is so important. Art in whatever form it may be, could be a powerful tool for resistance, especially in this social political climate we're living in. It brings social awareness to a lot of issues our community is dealing with and in a non-common way, you feel? So one of those issues me and my club partner, Saul, chose to talk about, which we feel is relevant, very relevant, is the war on immigration. So Danny Peralta's, one of his exhibitions kind of does touch upon it, but we wanted to touch upon it more because we feel it's especially relevant because of the election going on and, how the Trump admin compared to hopefully a new admin is going to deal with it. We don't really know because of the election results. But yeah, that's what we want to talk about, the war on immigration issues, but specifically in the New York metropolitan area. So I'm going to pass it on to Saul to start talking about it.
Yeah, before I begin, can everybody hear me? Because I can see myself lagging, and as long as you can hear me, I don't think that matters.
You're good.
Yeah,
I can
all
hear
right,
you well.
cool. Okay, nice. All right, so hello everyone. Welcome to Art in the Environment of Resistance. My name is Saul Flores. I am a first gen from the Bronx as well. So Danny, nice to see you. And yeah, and I'm I'm documentarian of El Museo, so I take pictures of our events. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we haven't had many in-person events, but that would have been my job, right? So, right, to begin, let's go back 4 years ago to Trump's campaign. And everyone remembers how adamant he was about building a wall by the border of Mexico. He went with it and he won. And he's kept his word. Technically, parts of the wall have gone up, but we know that there's more to it than the wall. If you go to the whitehouse.gov, it says that they want to serve national interests. And one of the ways they want to do this is with the swift removal of unlawful entrants. And they've kept their word on that. Since Trump has taken office, deportations have increased. And another way they're tackling immigration is by eliminating the visa lottery. And they want to replace that visa lottery with merit-based entry, aka legal immigration. But in terms of legal immigration, they've been denying people left and right, refugees, asylum seekers. They've been denying them, and legal entries have dropped 49% since he's taken office. And he hasn't even signed an immigration law. These are all just policies and proclamations, and they've taken effect very quickly. I mean, it's been 4 years, and it's such a drastic effect. But it seems pretty unfair because why give these people false hope? Why tell them, hey, we'll let you in, just do it the right way, go through the process and you're in. So these people go through the process and they still get denied anyway. Like they go through the process and they get denied anyway. But this is where resistance comes in, because immigrants leave their home countries for several reasons, and one of them being they want a better life. My parents left Mexico, more than 25 years ago. They've been here since, for looking for a better life for themselves and for me. Like, they didn't know how many kids they were gonna have, but they knew they were gonna have a good life. And to come all the way to the border and to be denied, they easily could have accepted that fate, but they didn't. What they did was they created makeshift buildings and created a community of rejectees. And these people come from all parts of South America and Central America. And that's where the resistance comes in. Like, they are sending a message to both the Mexican and American governments, telling them, yes, you denied us, but we still have hope. We still have hope, and we're here. Because in essence, the United States is a melting pot of immigrants and cultures. And like us, they're waiting for the results of this presidential election. Biden does want to modernize the immigration system by ending prolonged detention and reinvesting in a case management plan. But again, only time will tell. And that's where resistance and resilience, because resistance and resilience go hand in hand. I firmly believe that. And the makeshift communities by the border are a representation of that. But there's more than just people staying in one space. Justin, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Saul. So I wanted to add what Saul was saying, specifically about the resistance and resilience of immigrant communities. So for example, like the wall at the U.S.-Mexico borderline. The way immigrants and the Latinx community showed resistance is they actually started creating murals on the border fence. This is this shows a powerful message because they write their words, their messages, they convey their feelings on that, and that is a form that's like a way to just express what they're feeling inside and what they're fighting for. So the immigrant communities like tend to cluster around cities. So specifically, New York City, we hold the largest population of undocumented immigrants. That's why it's more relevant to us. So majority of the people you work with, about 1 in 4 of them are immigrants, either undocumented or illegal, whatever it may be. Specifically in Queens, they have the largest population out of all of the boroughs. And right now, Queens, I don't know if any of y'all have went there, but Queens is alive with culture. Like it's a melting pot. Like you see art on the streets, you see music. I don't know, every time I go there, I always hear music playing, and it's a merengue or bachata, and I see a lot of art, and without anybody telling me anything, like you already have a feeling of strength and how hard they're really working towards preserving their culture. Because when the transition to America isn't an easy one, especially with the language barrier, financial insecurities and stuff. So you see how a disadvantaged community was able to use art to grow their community and strengthen their community. And that's something art is a way that everybody is able to connect. It's really bridging a lot of communities because, immigrants don't really separate themselves so much based on nationalities. They all come as one to support each other and their own fights. So with the Trump admin, it was very, threatening for a lot of immigrants. There has been like a 150% increase of immigrants detained by ICE since the Obama admin to the Trump admin. So it's been a crazy spike, and specifically in Queens, because there is a large population in there. And like it basically, you're taking away a whole group of people, and then depriving them of any form of creative outlet. So unfortunately, many of them are held in ICE centers, and they're not really able to express anything. Immigrants have a lot of trauma to bear through, and art has actually proved to be very therapeutic. It helps deal with PTSD, trauma, anxiety. So if you're taking away such a powerful tool from a group of people, it's purposely being done to weaken them. So this is like why art is very important, for communities to thrive, for communities to come in solidarity, to fight against certain issues. I'm sure many of y'all have seen with the Black Lives Matter movement, there have been a lot of creators out there, bringing social awareness to certain issues. You search up graffiti art, you search up art about on the border, you search up art in front of the White House, like there's art everywhere, any form, way, photography, spoken word, like written word, a form of it's a form of just creative, like a self-expression. And for people of color, especially marginalized communities, who are being threatened a lot by the Trump admin, that's their best tool. Simply existing as one is a form of resistance, So this is why I really appreciate Danny Peralta's work. He really is able to show how, art brings strength to community, especially with his organization. So I'd like everyone to hear more about what he has to say. I just think, there's so many ways issues could be expressed through art. And that's actually, artists are needed at this point. They're very important to the movement right now. So I'd like to pass it on to Danny.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Saul. Thank you, Zach, and everybody joining. It's good to see some of my friends on here and some new friends that we're going to make along the way. Again, this is an honor for me to be here today to speak about this topic and to connect my work back to this larger narrative that I've been fortunate to be a part of here at the Point. And when you think about, when I think about my work, excuse me, you know, my work as a photographer, you know, became like official, I think, in many ways when I came to the Point, and when I came to ICP at the Point, and when I started to understand again those connections between, you know, what I thought I wanted to do and my expression and this larger world that we live in this community that we love and that we want to uphold and support and revitalize. So this is a big deal. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak about this. This is something that I enjoy doing, and mostly for my own self, my own sanity in some ways. You know, in the digital world, we spend a lot of time taking a lot of images, and a lot of it gets hoarded into these little boxes. And so this is my way of getting it out. So thank you for letting me bring out all my stuff and bring it out to you. But really what I want to do is I want to have a conversation. I want to maybe take, you know, maybe half an hour to show you some images and talk about some of my work. But really, I would love to have a larger conversation about, you know, again, environmental justice and art and culture, and what are those cross streets that exist between them, because there is a lot of it. And again, when I think about my work, you know, organizing and doing documentary photography is very similar. You know, if you're doing it with a certain kind of lens, you're kind of searching for the same things. You're looking for, you know, personal transformation. You're looking to connect people and communities. You're looking to use your art, you know, as a call to action, if you will. You know, like what is it you're seeing? What's making you crazy? And how do you use your talents and your assets to address that in a creative way? I think, you know, in marginalized societies and communities, a lot of the times that, you know, we build our self-esteem comes from our ability to make things with our hands, and to be, again, unique and be in our flesh, and to bring, you know, the context and the histories that we bring of our people and our communities to the forefront in order to feel like we're humans. You know, where the whole world says, look, you don't have a white picket fence, you know, Santa Claus doesn't come for you every year, like whatever these things are, you know, we have to find a place to be, and in the community we do that. And in New York, which I'm gonna say is less of a melting pot and more like a box of crayons. I want you to think about it like that. I don't know how much we actually mix, but I know that if we don't sit in the same room together, we're kind of screwed, right? Because we need each other to kind of coexist. But I don't know if we're really melting the way that we should, because we don't act like that. So I think we're individuals in a big box that we complement each other, and we should be thinking that way. You know, the point is that, and I want to mention that because the Point put me on a mission, and I'm gonna pull up my I'm gonna start sharing my screen now in a second, so you can kind of see where I'm at. Here we go, and I'm just gonna start talking. And please, you know, stop me along the way. Again, this is a presentation that I'm doing, but this is, you know, a conversation for all of us to have. And I want to again connect this back to my work. And so again, if there's any overlap or things that don't make sense, please check me on that. I'm going to start off real quick. This is one of my first images. You know, I've been doing photography now for almost 20 years now. This fall, I bought a camera in 2000, in the fall of 2000. I graduated from college. I got a job. I got me a camera because I wanted to shoot. And I was a visual artist for many years, but I didn't exercise it. I was just, you know, doodling in my notebooks and taking pictures of my friends, but never taking it very serious. And in 2000, you know, out of boredom, out of graduating college, I bought a camera and I went to the Dominican Republic. And again, you know, many similar to a lot of us, you know, searching, you know. I don't use the term a lot, but I do think about the concept of exile, you know, like how, you know, our parents came here, you know, kind of running from something that, you know, wasn't healthy for them and that they wanted a better life. And they ended up here. And, you know, you create a certain kind of individual like myself who was kind of here and very present, but also kind of searching still, you know, trying to find who are we, you know, why am I here? What am I doing? You know, what's the purpose of my life? And we lose a lot of history. And at the time I was like 22 years old, I was looking for my history. And I went to DR, I bought this camera, I bought some film, and I went and I took a picture of my grandmother, who was like her 90s at the time. And this was my way again of connecting back to myself And this was the first time that I really, picked up the camera and again, thought about it as an art form. I started to plant ideas of critical thought and getting me thinking again about, inequality and justice and, the condition that I see myself living in, and why is that different than that? And why is, what are these pictures of the earth burning? And, like, what are all these things happening? And really looking again at photography as that tool, not only to understand what's happening, but also to reflect what I was living. And and again, I went on a search, and my grandma was the first person that I kind of thought of. She was my only living, grandparent, and I was very interested in hearing her story. And I went and spent time with her. And I spent maybe, two nice Christmases back to back with her, before I couldn't afford it to go back out there to check her. But, but again, I had to search. I was searching. And again, like people that are doing environmental justice, we're searching for answers. We're searching for solutions. And that's how I went out there to see my grandmother. Let me see if I can, so again, this whole time I was shooting, started picking up projects, neighbors, this is my next door neighbor. I grew up with this guy. He was really wacky. I wasn't allowed to talk to him. It was very strange. But again, in my 20s and my curiosity, I started to turn the camera to people, into things that, again, I may have not been supposed to be, looking at or paying attention to, but that I was very interested in. And I was very interested in this narrative. And why is it that we have, these narratives and where are these communities of people? Like, who are these artists? This guy was a photographer. I wish I would have known that, growing up, because I maybe would have had more time to hang out with him with a camera, but I never did. By the time I found him, he was already elderly, and he actually passed not too late after this. A life or death, another reason why we use the camera to capture those things. But again, turning the camera, on my friends and my family. My mother, this is my mother. This is my mother about maybe 12, 13 years ago, when she was working at Amy's Bread downtown. And that was my first photo project. The first time I said, you know what, I'm going to shoot a body of work, I was very interested in spending time with my mom. I had moved out of my house. I wasn't seeing my parents enough. But everywhere I went, I felt like I was acting like my parents. I was like in one of those commercials or whatever, one of those Geico commercials where you become your parents. But, why do I have this incessant need to work so hard and be everywhere at once and, work all night? Like, it comes from my parents. My mother busted her ass, my father busted his ass to get us to where we were. This woman has on paper, a third grade education, but is probably the smartest person that I've ever met, probably the wisest person that I've ever met. And I wanted to capture that. And again, I wanted to tell my mother's story, as hard and painful as it was to see her, working, in the middle of the night, busting, doing very hard manual labor for years. It hurt me to do it, but I had to. And I had to turn the camera onto these things for me to kind of understand where I was and what my world and my history was. And again, I kept doing that. And, people like Glenn, this photo, obviously I didn't take this photograph, but I put this in here because Glenn was one of my students. And one of the things, again, that I learned through this concerned photography of ICP is that, you're only as good as the person next to you. You can't create bodies of work in a vacuum, on your own. You have to show it to people. You have to bring it to people. And the same way somebody offered me mentorship with the camera, I wanted to extend it. And so Glenn was a young man who we extended this camera to. His friends, me, my friends, Bashara, Mark, Frank. We created this thing called the New York City Bridge Project, and it was an opportunity for us again to teach photography to young people. Glenn was one of their students, and Glenn was murdered September 10th, 2009, in the Lower East Side for no reason, randomly murdered. And when that happened, again, threw everything out of context. Why is it that I'm shooting these projects, and what's the freaking point of shooting? If the work that we do and if the most promising people that we're doing it for are not here. And so I kind of went into this tailspin. And at the time, I was already working at the Point. I was already trying to shoot projects again that were about this community that I was working at, because I was very curious, outside of the walls of the Point, at our space here, we revitalize the neighborhood. We do it with youth development, arts and cultural work, and we do a lot of policy, environmental justice work, organizing and things of that nature. But there's a lot of pockets of the community that we don't necessarily see every day. And so I started to, again, go into these other parts of the neighborhood. And with my trauma, I connected back to the trauma of some of my residents out here who lost their friend. And this is a young man on that image. His name was Damien. And he used to be a graffiti writer. He used to be a dancer. He was a very well-known person in the neighborhood. but he was killed similarly to Glenn. And so again, I found a community of people that not only were interested in having their story told and documented, but that actually, we shared the same trauma, we shared the same pain, we were in the same place, and we were in the same neighborhood, and I had this kinship with these people, and I spent time with his mom and his friends and families to kind of get to know who he was and tell his story, really, because I was trying to tell Glenn's story, and I was really trying to heal. That's the first time I realized that I was using the camera because I had a lot of my own issues to deal with. And I had seen a lot of things that that maybe I needed a place to kind of put it in and to park it and a place to put that energy. And so this was a project that I did. It was called Love Lives, the story of Damien Cheese Martinez. And again, it was, me searching for myself through people, but also with people, not doing it alone. And the camera kind of gave me that ability to do that. But again, similar to, organizing, it's about, being in the community and getting to know people and talking to people and bridging, my practices. I have a day job, but I also have this other thing that I like to do. And how do we bridge these things? How do I reach the most vulnerable young people and families in the neighborhood that don't even come into our walls because they don't, understand sometimes the need and the value of art or to organize. They just kind of, exist, surviving, day to day. And so again, this is me in Hunts Point, getting to know this neighborhood and meeting again really amazing, resilient people. Maria, who's the mother, the aunt of one of our famous, illustrious artists who also passed away this year, Agustin, who passed away a little bit before COVID, I believe, around that time. But again, these are people living in this neighborhood, and it was very hard to deny that they're here, and very much so deny that they had a story to tell, and that I wanted to capture that. Hunts Point workers, similar. The auto industry out here in Hunts Point is, takes over the neighborhood sometimes in a way that's not healthy. But what I found was that, a lot of these guys are just workers, they're family men, they want to come here, they want to do what they do, and they want to go home. And so sometimes the environmental impact that they're having, they don't even know it. So again, this was me trying to bridge that gap, what is the impact of all of these trucks and, diesel truck traffic in our neighborhood. And then also, again, documenting family and friends. This is my good friend Akbar, who's out in Chicago now. But again, another artist, and one of the things you learn doing this work is that, everybody's very talented, but people don't really document the work. And at the time that I was doing this, even though social media was kind of happening, it wasn't as prevalent, and people were still kind of relying on people like a photographer to do the work. Now everybody does it for themselves, which is great, and they have the agency to do that. But at the time, it was like, Danny has a camera, I need some pictures, let me call him up and let's make something happen. And that's kind of how I entered into my work. And that's how I entered into this project called About That Life. And I'm gonna show a couple images of this real quick. And this is the project that you mentioned that is about immigration. And this is a story again about a young man that I know, again, who came here when he was very small. He was, maybe 2 or 3 years old, didn't know he was undocumented until he got arrested in his teen years, and has pretty much lived in that time, in anonymity, taking odd jobs of all types, surviving, even though he has a family, vital, strong young man, comes from somewhere. This is actually the last image of him leaving DR before he came. Very talented young man, amazing rapper, dancer, like a really strong entertainer, but, again, can't show his face because, again, he's worried that ICE is going to come look for him. But again, normal dude, like every Dominican goes to the barbershop on Fridays to get that shape up, but again, trauma, even though I grew up in this country, and again, I didn't have to worry about, whether or not I could live in this country, I share a lot of the similar traumas, and the anonymity and the uncertainty of being a young Black man in this country. And so that's what I wanted to shoot, and at the time that I started this project, Obama was, and his administration were deporting people at record numbers, and my biggest fear was that, the combination of the war on immigrants and the war on drugs was going to get folks like my boy over here deported, with the quick fast. And then again, I turned to other, communities and people out here in the neighborhood that, again, because I'm sitting here for 8-10 hours at a time in an office setting, I don't get to meet. And at the time, there's a lot of talk about the opioid epidemic, right? Everybody's talking about, oh, everybody's strung out, and what are we going to do? All of a sudden, people are worried about what the effects of heroin are having on our community, even though it's been happening now for 40, 50 years. And again, I'm out there in the community, and yeah, there's people that are strung out and might be hopeless, but what I found was that there was a lot of people that are very hopeful, and that there's a whole community of people that support each other, and that they're not drug addicts, they're drug users, and flipping that narrative and thinking about that counter narrative that is very necessary, because a lot of our community assets and our cultural assets get demonized in a certain kind of way. If you're in your flesh and you talk too loud, there's a problem. If you dress too loud, there's a problem. If you sit in the wrong place, there's a problem. And there's people that have a complete counter narrative to that. And I wanted to explore that. And I met people at this place called the New York Harm Reduction Educators. And these are people, again, that were not only telling you it's okay that you're in this, not that it's okay, but like, it's not your fault that you're in this place, that you have all this trauma and that you're trying to appease it with drug use, but that if you're going to do it, let's do it safely. And I met an amazing group of people that look out for each other in that way. And they do things like yoga, and they do things like, meet regularly, and they serve as each other's medicine, literally. And that was what I call this project. These are people that, may have been using drugs now for 20, 30 years. And they're surviving and they're thriving because they're doing it, and they have a community of people that support them, and that, again, allow them to laugh and give them a space to be human, and to have that therapy that is very necessary. And again, I've never ever think of I've never did think about our community in a negative way, but this project, I'm telling you, it humanized me more than I ever thought. I've never seen people that were so again, radically loving to one another. People that are discarded. I would see, there would be, I'm going to give you a good example. We would be out like 2 in.the doing outreach with sex workers in the neighborhood, and I'm out here photographing it. And there was this one young lady that came up who was, in the middle of the winter, half naked, wearing a coat, with a fever and bloody, because she, somebody had assaulted her. And I remember just seeing one of the workers, she came up to one of the workers, and the worker, without hesitation, just opened up her arms and gave this woman a hug. And it was the most powerful display I've ever seen, whereas most people would have walked away in that situation. This person walked toward her. And again, it totally humanized it. I thought we were doing amazing work at the point, and here are these people at 2 o'clock in the morning in Hunts Point doing things that we would never do. And again, very, very impactful. And again, taught me a lot about what it means to organize and be a justice leader, an environmental justice leader. I want to give a shout out to my man, Norman here, Polite, who also passed away a couple months after this. And again, I never knew how powerful it is to use the camera until people pass away. And you can, you have this image of this person, and you can present it to a family, and you can give it to them. And I got the pleasure of doing that yesterday with a friend of mine whose work is actually in the Dos Mundos exhibit. And before I show that work, I don't know if there's a pause in here. I don't even know how long I've been talking. I feel like I've been talking forever. But is there any questions or anything? Does anybody, should I just keep going? Yeah, it's okay. Just keep going. I'm gonna keep going. All right.
Yeah, you can keep going. I mean, I'd like to add on my own experience. Like what you said just resonates a lot with me. The power of photography just to bring empathy, from outsiders, because, they don't know what it is to be us, but like photography, it is a skill, and it could really bring that. And what you said specifically about how, you found photography more meaningful after the person passed away, like that is definitely true. Like after COVID and after experiencing so many like losses, the only thing I have left is like photography. So that keeps my family going, you feel? And if we didn't have those images, I really don't know what I would do. Like I always ask for an image because it brings me some type of peace. So that's some form of healing. Like I love seeing pictures of my family. Like when I was growing up, like it's just so necessary for us. And I keep going. I like what you're saying.
Yeah, I want to comment on something too. Yeah, photography is very powerful, and it's also very informative because I had no idea that there was such a support group for drug users because I grew up with my parents telling me do not touch any drugs at all. They are all bad for you, right? You once you take it, that's it. You're you're done, right? Life is over, right? And to see them, they look happy, they look healthy, they look well, and to know that they're still taking drugs, and it's like human connection can do so much.
Yeah.
Human connection does so much, and it's just it surprised me because I had no idea that was even possible. I thought you take drugs and you'll end up on the street, falling asleep on the floor, and but no, that's not the case. And
That's,
I really appreciate your work because I didn't know that.
yeah, that is the case for everybody. And again, this is the things that I learned too. This is why this is so important to explore and to not assume and to not take media for media's sake. Now, that's what I learned about using the camera is that you have to be critical. And when you turn that critical lens onto something that like that, and you say, look, this is not really what you're seeing, this is what you're really looking at, it creates a whole nother dynamic and people can be happy in these images. And that's a very powerful thing. Again, when I was showing this work to people and I was trying to get it published initially, the fight back that I had was that they looked too like, I don't know, people were mad that they didn't look like they were homeless and that they were dying. Like people were mad. They wanted to see that. And that's what the larger media companies, that's what they wanted me to show. They're like, well, this is great, but this is like too nice. And it's like, what? Like how insane is
Yeah.
you want to continue to perpetuate these things when we see what's happening. And so, so that's very important. And again, I think, I learned a lot. I mean, I can't imagine, like I've met, if you ever meet these folks from Naira, they'll tell you how many lives they saved, like literally, physically. Like I've never saved a life. You know what I mean? I've done this work for 2 years, but people may have had, a decent life because of the interactions they've had with our agencies, but I've never like physically like put an naloxone, shot into somebody's leg and like watched them come back to life. And I know people have done that to 100 people. I mean, why is the story not being told? Like, why are we just talking about it like, people are just strung out? Like, no, people are actually surviving and they're actually helping each other survive. And that's all I needed to know to tell the story. And I don't care who sees it. People like you see it, learn a little bit about it.
But it's also like people won't be interested in like happy things. Like if you're driving in the highway, you'll look at a car crash because that's interesting, So I understand why they would be so hesitant to publish your work because it wouldn't catch people's attention.
Yeah.
If there's no context, it's hard.
It catches the wrong attention. And again, when you're trying to keep a certain community at a certain place, then it breaks with that. And people were not really interested in that. And again, this is why I created this body work. And I'm going to start talking about this real quick. Because this is just, and you guys can go to my website later as well and see it. But this is the body work that's part of Dos Mundos. And again, this is the project that I've been shooting while I've been shooting all these other projects, because this is more of my personal project. This is more of like, I don't have to shoot this as a project. This is just me being in the room with my friends, again, who are mostly artists. And when I spoke to Juanita months ago when we were trying to put the show together, she was like, she's very interested about that life story, and she was also very interested in Love Lives. And at the time, again, we started to see, the George Floyd stuff happening and the Black Lives Matter. And I was very much so in that headspace, to say the least. And so for a long time, I've been shooting this project and I didn't share with anybody. This is like me, my personal archive. Me and my friends will see it. I might share them with them, but I was just capturing it for my own sake. And I was like, you know what? I have to share this work because this is the work of very similar people like the George Floyds and other community, members, again, endangered species like, Black men. The concept is that this Black man, created the opportunity for him to get murdered by police, and that just blew my mind because the Black men that I know in my whole life, some of them, great, like all humans have their issues, but I've met an amazing group of people that are just like, so again, radically love each other in a way that, breaks every mold. And I wanted to tell that story. And in this case, it's through Guerrilla Grooves Radio, a radio show that happens once a week, broadcast out of the South Bronx. People like Rhinoceros Funk and Fred and a couple other heads. Again, bring together all of these artists, you know, visual artists, rappers, DJs, MCs from all over the world. And again, we build on each other's assets and we create a space again for people just to hang out and explore and do it in a safe way and be talented and share their wealth and create that counter narrative. You know, celebrate. This is Vice Versa's right here. This is the young man I was talking about earlier who passed away during COVID. You know, this young man traveled the world, you know, through something called EO Dub, which I'll put a link in there or something, but the end of the week. And it was like a freestyle session battle, you know, circuit that's like global. When Vice Versa died, there was like a 2-week tribute that literally went on for like 2 weeks straight on Twitch, where like somebody in Croatia would pick it up, and once they were done with it, somebody in France would pick it up, and once they were done with it, somebody in Spain would pick it up, and literally went all over the world because that's the impact this guy had. Nobody knew this guy. You know, he wasn't on Hot 97. He didn't, you know, make it to Nicki Minaj's wedding or whatever the hell it is. But he was a true artist, and this dude has a bigger impact than most people would ever have in spreading the culture. And again, being able to capture that, that's all I needed. You know, having that image I could share with his wife, you know, meant the world to me. And I went, you know, to Brooklyn yesterday to pick it up and dropped it off. And that was it. That was all I needed to do yesterday, you know, to kind of alleviate myself from the craziness that was happening. But this is why I do the work. And these are my friends and these are my families. And again, you know, to see, you know, groups of Black men in a room together, you know, regularly celebrating, you know, under the guise of hip hop, that's all you got. You know, that's all I got. You know, I mean, you see it, you know, 15, 20 people before social distancing in a room where, you know, where there's no God telling you what to do. That's real shit. You know, they're not gathering because they're guilty of something. They're not gathering because there's money involved. They're gathering because literally they need to survive with each other. And that's what the story's about. And so I wanted to share this story because, again, this is where I'm at. And you know, regardless of you know, who I am as an individual or where my work is, like, this is where I end up at the end of the day. You know, this is the closest thing that I get to being myself in both instances, you know, as a man, as an artist, and as somebody who likes to build community and think about justice. This is it. This is the ultimate for me, you know?
Danny, I have a question for you.
Oh, please.
When you're photographing from the beginning, are you thinking more about how it will affect you personally, or are you thinking more of a greater social justice or maybe community justice narrative? Like, are you looking at your images as something that builds on a story, or are you just taking images that really move you personally?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think that I'm very much so, again, moved by things that I can't do much about. Like when I feel kind of helpless, I jump into things, you know, because I don't know, sometimes I don't, there's a lot of projects that I started, you know, that are just like a project and I thought, oh, you know, I'm going to do this project and I'm going to shoot it and it doesn't really get anywhere. So a lot of these projects end up becoming projects because I just end up shooting them for long term. So I don't necessarily think of them as projects, but they end up culminating that way sometimes after, you know, 5 years of shooting them. Most of these things I shoot are multi-year, you know. I don't really, I mean, I guess somebody's, you know, shoots me to pay, you know, pays me to shoot a wedding or something, that's different. But most of these projects take me 3, 4, 5 years to shoot. In this case, this project I've been shooting for over, I want to say like 15 years now to some capacity, you know. And again, this is a space also, not only with people, but also the environment, you know, like this is a building that is right on 134th and off of 3rd Ave, like right by the Bruckner. If you understand what's happening in the South Bronx right now, all this stuff is being displaced, you know, people are getting moved out. You know, this is probably one of the last, I would say, like pure spaces of hip hop culture in the South Bronx, like right on, you know, right when you cross over into Harlem, right before you get into the borough. And it's at jeopardy, you know, what happens to these, you know, all these artists that gather regularly if the space is not there, you know? Where do these artists end up? You know, how do they connect? Where's that therapy? Where's that space to shine? It gets lost. And so again, capturing it not only for the people, but also for the environment. But again, how I shoot a project is always very personal. And again, comes from a place where, first of all, curiosity. And then if somebody can use the images for something, then I'll park it there. But really it's about me being curious and me honestly, you know, having an outlet to put my art. Thank you, Ron. Yeah.
Can I make just like an observation about the space? It's so full of art, and like
Yeah.
like you saw that person with the sketchbook. I mean, it's just, I was just looking through the photos because I haven't seen all of them. I've seen some of these. There's just like paintings, there's drawings, there's artwork everywhere, and that's really,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just an observation. I'm like, wow, that place is like, it's like a gallery. It looks like,
Yeah, it is. It serves as that. And again, if you've never had your work in a gallery, this is it. Like this is it. And this is why it's so important, because I know people who've never had an art show, but they've had an art show at Fred's, and that's how they're an artist. And we know them as an artist, even if their mom doesn't like them or doesn't pay their bills. They're legit in our eyes. We legitimize each other. This is what this is about, and this is what the environmental justice movement is all about too. It's like, if we don't legitimize like our communities and our narrative now, people are just going to walk through us. They're going to continue to do that. We own this. This space, again, even if Fred doesn't own the space, he owns the space, if that makes any sense. We own this narrative. Nobody can tell us that, that we are who we are. There's no question about it. And that's what environmental justice is. You organize so that you can build that trust, and that you can build that community, and you can own that narrative. So nobody can come out of it.
Are you concerned that you own the space, but you don't legally own the space, and that neighborhood might be one of the hottest neighborhoods in the city right now as far as gentrification and being overdeveloped? For these realtors and developers, they just move in and kick you out, and they don't care if you think you own it or not.
Yeah.
If it's not on paper, they don't respect that.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a challenge. The space is still there. Social distancing, obviously, people don't hang out there anymore. It's a different thing. You can't really gather there no more, but they do have the space still. And one thing that I will say is, like Fred, I've known Fred now for a little over 10 years. He's been now in 3 different places in the South Bronx that I've been in, and this was the one he's been in the most permanent, most recently. But not to say like, if he got to go, he'll find another space. And when we first started doing a lot of these shows, it actually used to be in my apartment, because we didn't have spaces to do this. This is before I started working at the Point. And so we were literally doing stuff like this out of our house. I'm sorry, I didn't finish. So yeah, so the spaces will live. And again, if it's somebody's living room, the corner, whatever it is, people create ownership without a deed all day, which is a challenge when you don't have a deed. But I think that ownership is also, in the eye of the beholder, and it looks like a lot of things depending on where you are. But thank you, Ron. That is true. That's the fear, is that once these things get displaced, and you see all these old dudes in these pictures, right? Like once they get displaced, where are they gonna go? You know what I'm saying? Like really, where are you willing to rebuild again and again and again? It's exhausting. That's a very real thing. But these are family members, these are cousins, man. Like I get to see people, father and son hanging out in the same space, talking about rap and that new song that they just heard, whatever that is. I mean, it's real, yeah, people like Percy P. I mean, this guy's from Patterson Projects. This guy's a legend. If you ask your favorite rapper, he's probably their favorite rapper, but you
know Percy, yeah.
Yeah,
he performed a long time ago at the Bronx Museum.
Exactly, he's a legend,
His whole family was there.
Beautiful, beautiful spirit.
Yeah.
Brings a lot of, he's the bridge in many instances for us to meet a lot of people again, because he's traveled the world, and when they come to the Bronx to visit him, he brings them over and so engage with them, yeah, I don't know, these are my friends. I don't know, this is me, showing you, what it's like to be like in love with people. Like I love these motherfuckers, man. Like, they make my day, and I have a long day at the Point. I can go down to the studio and I can hang out till 10 o'clock at night and be myself and forget for a minute or two, and live in that space. And again, there's nothing like that. I love seeing, especially the younger generation and the 20-year-olds coming through to learn and to be a part of it as well. Yeah, like dudes, putting their heads on each other's shoulders. I mean, who shows you that? You know what I mean? Who's capturing that? This is very important to me, Elder Sensei and Art Train in this embrace is what I see. This is my people. I don't care what you say about them. You can't kill these motherfuckers because this is who they are. This is very, very real, very, very real. And that's my presentation, I don't know if you guys have any questions. I'll keep playing images here. Please go to my website and check it out. Yeah, go to thepoint.org, check out the work we're doing there. Yeah, support your local artists. Be okay with being an artist. I don't know how many of you young folks in the room, feel like, I know I didn't feel like an artist until very recently. When I was in my early 20s, when I was actually in my teen years, when I wanted to apply to go to college, I applied to all these art schools and I got into all of them, and I didn't pursue art because I'd never met an artist. My mother said, "You're gonna go to college to do what? Like, who the hell are these people?" And I literally sat back and I thought, and I started counting, and the only artists I knew were like Ralph McDaniels, who had like a video music box, right? I thought he was the coolest motherhead in the world, man. I still love that. And like Jamel Shabazz, there was a couple people, but I didn't have it in me to be like, you know what, I'm gonna be that. And I went off and I got an education degree because I thought maybe I could just be a teacher, which again, I learned through hip hop. But like, KRS-One, like, you can teach and create these historical narratives. I was a high school history teacher, sadly, for a while, before I said, you know what, this is not for me. But again, it was because I didn't have the self-esteem as an artist. And for the last 20 years, I've been trying to find it because I kind of, put it away for too long. But I would encourage anybody who does have that feeling, that urge, to go ahead and pursue it, because you know what, we're not guaranteed anything else. And again, this is where we are. This is our wealth. This is our history, our heritage. We gotta be a part of it.
I want to say there's something so in tune with kind of the founding, what Foco was founded for, right? Like, Foco really was this group of photographers kind of really centered in El Barrio, because this was like 70s, right? And there were all of these white photographers coming in and like publishing books about this area, right? And yet there was no documentation from within the community itself. And so that was really a lot of the core of what Foco was about self-representation, representing, capturing and presenting one's community from within the community, instead of it being like some sort of documentary photographer's project where they come in and they take a picture, which is related back again to what you were saying. Like, people didn't want to show these pictures because they wanted to see like, oh, the struggle or the, the way that they could present it through that lens, right? Instead of through the own lens of the community. So there are some questions here.
Yes.
Sarah is wondering, I think Sarah's question is related to the relationship of what you're giving to the subjects of the portraits. Like, is essentially kind of how you're repaying the generosity. And part of me wonders if it's actually more natural and less like of a transfer of something.
Yeah, it's definitely less transactional. And I take a lot of pictures, so if I was printing them all out every day, then I would just be broke. No, but I do share the images a lot. And like I said, I became kind of the go-to photographer for a lot of my friends who are artists. And so, so I've shot, dozens of album covers, and I've, flyers and, magazines. And I mean, yeah, that's where I'm at. So yes, it is very reciprocal. I am very in tune with the fact that, like, if I capture something from somebody and I have that, that I do have to share it out. So I'm very intentional about that. And again, this is why I don't like shoot things that I don't care for, because if that was the case, then again, it would just live in a hard drive. But once I shoot my friends and people again that I think are important, then the work shows that way, and I do share it that way. Again, this body of work, I just kept it hidden for a long time because I'm just like, it's not done. And again, with COVID and with Black Lives Matter, nothing is the same. So now's the time to show it. And if there was ever a time to again, like, humanize the Black man, now's the time. How can I contribute to that? How can my images support that part of it? So yeah, so I do try to do it, but I try to keep things away from traditional methods of transaction, if you will. This is I really try to avoid that as much as possible.
How do you feel, Danny, about or how do your subjects feel about being photographed sometimes we are in these spaces and we want them to remain sort of private and intimate. And allowing a camera into that space is almost like you are bringing the world into that space. So how do your subjects feel about being photographed?
Yeah. You know, again, I find it so interesting. I'm very shy, right? Like I'm very, very, very shy. So I would never, ever actually ask somebody to take their picture, unless, again, I'm like really compelled or like I'm a fan. And so I ended up being a fan of a lot of these people. And I say I'm a fan, and on the other end, they're like, yeah, I'm a performer. So yeah, you want to take my picture. You know? I'm not shy, especially in this setting. You know, this particular project, all these guys want their pictures taken, right? Because they're like, yeah, I'm the dude, right? You need to take a picture of me. But in other instances, for example, like the About That Life project about immigration and the war on immigration, you know, that one took a minute. You know, honestly, I was hanging out with this guy for maybe like 2 years before I even took a picture of him. Honestly, he wasn't necessarily uncomfortable with it, but he was not comfortable with the fact that maybe it might be shown to people. Yeah. And so that narrative actually became one of these narratives where you see his face covered, because, you know, 95% of the images did show him, and I was not interested in getting him in trouble and creating a repository for you to find this person who's undocumented. You know, here's a whole photo issue about, you know, this document, come find them. You know, like that was not my intention. So it depends, but like I said, you know, you'd be surprised. People in the Bronx are very open to being photographed. They love it. You know, I love the conversations. If I had a little more, you know. I wouldn't say confidence, but if I had a little more, I don't know, less fear, I would walk around all day and ask people, let me get your picture. And I'm sure 95% of people will let me do it, because people are just that open and that willing to tell their story sometimes, if they can trust you. And if you look like them, and if you reflect that trust that they're offering you back to them, that's a big deal. And that's all you can ask for from a subject and from a photographer in some ways too, you know?
Danny, can I comment something on your presentation?
Yes.
I just want to congratulate you and also say hi to the wonderful hosts for Museo Escolar. This was a great conversation. And one thing that I don't want to say much, because I know Danny's work for a good number of years. We were both colleagues working in the Bronx. And what is fascinating, Danny, is that although you're shy, you take your time to break bread with these communities, and also to like create a connection. There's also that respect. And you know, one thing that I always keep telling people in the Bronx, and I wasn't born in the Bronx, I chose that place as my second home after I left Puerto Rico, is how open and warm people can be, and how much they like to share their stories. And what I've seen is that through the bodies of work, you have these communities that exist already, that pretty much form themselves because they're very organic, but also to me it's fascinating to see their humanity when I look at them. And when I see similar communities in my neighborhood, I live in East Harlem and I work in the Bronx, I think of your work. When I see the guys in the street selling whatever they're doing now, their thing is mask and hand sanitizer. It's interesting. I think, oh, Danny will be here documenting these guys at 103rd Street selling Lysol. And so I see that humanity. I see the daily greeting. I know some of the people say, go, hey, how are you? Oh, you need me to swipe you to get in the train? Sure, why not? So there's that sense of community that people don't see, that we see because we live in these communities. So I see that, and I wanted to just comment on that, and how that's also seen through the series of works that you have maintained that so consistently. So
thank you. Yeah, and Juanita see my work again. Big shouts to Foco. I was talking about this before. When I was at the point, you know, like 2002, I came to the point to learn black and white photography, and there was a magazine. There was Foco magazines in there, and again, it blew my mind. It totally blew my mind that there was like a whole magazine full of like photographers of color. You know, like there was no space for anybody else in it. I was like, I want to be in there one day. And so I want to see that. And
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. No, you know what is interesting? When you mentioned that you didn't see artists like you, I was just thinking how when Foco was formed and the photographers that put it together. And it's amazing to learn about El Museo Escolar and these student organizations that are creating a community and holding a space for people like them. And so other people know about them. And I think that's super important because when I was also a student, I mean, other than Puerto Rican artists, which I thought I need to be interested in people that are like me. I know what comes out in the art books, what it's European, what's American, but I wanted to know people like me with my reality, women of color making art, Black, Latino, Asian artists, the LGBTQ community. I wanted to see more of that because I'm thinking, but what about individuals that are not part of that mainstream? So I do think that exhibitions like Dos Mundos and the photographers that are now at New Paltz will create a space and hold a space and create a community that will inspire younger generations. So yeah, so that's my comment. I'm gonna mute myself.
Thank you for that. And I think somebody asked me a question about BARD, my experience at BARD, which was very particular. Yes. I was going to mention like the ICP BARD program, very, very unique program, and I was very happy to be a part of it. It was much more ICP than BARD, so I didn't necessarily interact much with BARD, so I'm just going to say that. But the ICP part of it, is always very strong. There's a lot of very, amazing people, and there's actually some on the phone right now on this thing. I gotta give a shout out to Abigail and the team from ICP at the Point, because the heart of ICP is not the buildings and the structure and the nice gallery. It's really the people that are in there, the educators and the admin that are doing amazing work to allow people like myself a space in the world of photography, and so I wanted to give them a shout out. But I wish I had spent more time at BART, but I didn't. So I can't speak on that. But ICP is dope. Support them for sure. International Center of Photography, International Center of Photography at the Point. Definitely support those guys.
Actually, sure. Danny, I remember in conversation with you about ICP, at the ICP BARD situation, and you said that they actually discouraged you from, like, you almost go there not to do photography. Can you speak on that and how you went from doing straight still photography into the kind of work that you got into? Sure.
Yeah, that's one thing. It is very supportive for art in general. And what happened to me, you see the type of stuff I shoot, like at some point I kind of hit a wall. Like, how many of these stories can you actually tell? And is the camera the only thing that I can use, So when I got to ICP, I was really looking to experiment. Honestly, I was looking for more than just like, the same. I mean, really for myself. I was looking for myself to do something different. I was trying to explore mediums and concepts and artists that I probably would never have explored on my own. But they encouraged that, and so I give them a lot of credit for kind of helping me, open my eyes again to what's possible, even with photography. In some ways, I tell people photography is kind of dead because of Instagram, but there's a lot of freaking dope photography happening out there. It just doesn't look like what used to look like photography, and so and for me, it was like spending the last couple of years trying to be okay with that. It's okay for the photography to not be like hardcore splitting journalism, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay. And so again, taking those layers off of my own work was very important. And again, trying to find other ways to tell stories without the camera, very important. And I'll share my, let me see if I can pull it up, because they did allow me to start playing around with different concepts. And what you see with my thesis show is a little bit of that. I spent some time painting, I started doing sound pieces, I started taking, graffiti walls that are like falling apart at the point and putting them back together, so all kinds of things, and Carrie asked the question there, how does it relate to environmental justice, and it does, I mean, you see this piece here, I started to paint people's inhalers, their asthma inhalers, right? Because that's a big issue here in the South Bronx, it's like air quality. And so I was like, damn, how do I talk about air quality without just a bunch of people, like choking out, like that's been done, right? Maybe I should focus on something else. And then, so you know what, there's all these people around me use inhalers, right? Everybody has an inhaler. My son has an inhaler. My best friend has an inhaler. My cousin has an inhaler. I could take a picture of that, but that's been done. I did that already. What happens if I sat down and painted with watercolor, these people's hands with inhalers. That was about environmental justice for me. That was about thinking about, again, those connections between my vision and these things that I wanted to talk about. And if I didn't take a picture of her again and all I could do was paint watercolors, of hands and asthma pumps, then I'm with it. I'm okay with that. Like I'm not adverse to that as an art form or as a medium for myself to explore. And again, what can it say about the environment, and what can I say about myself, and how does that contribute to a larger conversation? So yes, I'm totally down for that. And hopefully it reflects that. I started learning ceramics, just a bunch of different ways. And I still love the camera. I still shoot every day to some degree, but what else can I do? That's what ICP kind of put me in that position to do.
I'd like to add on also, like, it's not always like, I didn't see like how his artwork connected directly to environmental justice like all the time, but if you really think about it, like there's a lot of issues the community is facing that's very much tied to each other. It's a lot of intersectionality. For instance, like the war on drugs. There's a lot of undocumented immigrants that are, being counted in like the census and such, yet they don't have the right to vote. So they can't vote for policies like housing policies, education policies. They can't vote for that. The environment that they are pushed to live in, it's much smaller rooms. You go to the like Manhattan, Upper East Side or something, you don't see apartments like this. Just showing their living space is a big message itself. It's just a difference of like how, like, the resources that are available to people in like marginalized communities. So I feel like it just all goes hand in hand. Like there's a lot of environmental racism, voter suppression, political, just limitations. So I feel like the art could say whatever you want it to mean. You could go as deep as you want it to if you really are educated on like these sort of topics.
I would also say that there's something especially present in a lot of the work in the exhibition where you see that these artists are not solely defined by their art practice, but also by their community activism. And I think that your involvement at the point, which has built into it sort of the acceptance of like the principles of environmental justice, right? Which has built into it efforts to prepare residents for the effects of climate change, which, part of your practice is also like the education that you're providing and the opportunities you're providing for people to learn at the point. And I've found this to be the case in a lot of artists in this show, is that built into their practice, or, as an extension of their practice, or maybe their practice is an extension of this, is the work in the community that they're doing, related sometimes to community organizing, sometimes to social activism, sometimes to environmental activism.
Yeah. And again, I it's very important to think about like, art and what else, and I think that's the difference between like, what they call the downtown art scene or whatever the hell it is. Like, in our communities, you can't, just rely on art alone to kind of be the end all, and a lot of artist friends, and again, a lot of people even on this call can probably vouch for that. Like most artists that I know have a day job. You have to pay your bills. You have to, rent is expensive. You have to get the dog food or whatever the case is. So you always do have some sort of side job. And I find that a lot of artists tend to go to these kinds of spaces to work out of, because there is a certain level of freedom. And there is, again, you said like that practice of engaging with people. And, no good artist works, like I said, in a silo. Like you can't create without this larger context around you. And so being present and being around people creates a lot of opportunity for you to create from there, from stories, from colors, from, the smell in the room, whatever it is. Like that's what I think artists are reaching for as part of their practice, in these types of settings like The Point, or other organizations like The Point,
Do we have any other questions or, I see. Carrie says, I think that also the intimate portraits of your communities shows and helps to preserve them, and therefore is a tool of environmental justice and a way to prevent displacement. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah. Carrie's right. You know, Carrie's an environmental artist, justice. I mean, environmental justice artist from out here as well. You know, for many years. So there is a lot of overlap in that. And yes, preservation is a big part of that. That is a huge part of our work. Cultural preservation.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Any other comments from students from El Museo Escolar? Or?
Yeah, I'd like to say I think it's really important for there to be a rise of creators, artists of color, you know, Black, Indigenous, or any other ethnicity, because, you know, we've been having a lot of, I'd say mostly like white photographers who come into their communities. You know, they just take their pictures for their own benefit, and they tend to take it in a certain light that is negative. You know, they just show the struggle. And, you know, I've seen that a lot in the Black Lives Matter movement. I've been seeing like a lot of white photographers. They've been coming, and like a lot of people are grieving and protesting and angry, and they're coming and taking pictures. And what do they do with those pictures? They're able to, you know, sell them and, you know, make a profit off of it, which isn't really benefiting our community. So I feel like it's really important, especially like, you know, I feel like a lot of people of color are discouraged to pursue art, which is, you know, art, we need art because we need a shift in the narrative. You know, we need artists with a more ethnocentric view to, you know, also show joy in the struggle. You feel there's struggle, and then there's also joy, which is a powerful thing that communities of color are able to do because they're so resilient. They're able to overcome all these challenges and such. So I think that, you know, that's something also beautiful to show, because you see Danny Peralta's work, like it's something different that you wouldn't really see. And people are always just used to seeing struggle. Like that's what you always see in the media, and that is so destructive to people who like me who are viewing it. You feel that gives a negative view on it. And I'd also like to say that right now at Museo Escolar, our museum, so we do have photographs that we collect in a photo album. We have artifacts from Latinx Caribbean area, and we are looking to reopen our museum soon, but we are also looking for donations of any type of artwork that you feel represents the Latinx Caribbean community in overseas or in America, whatever you like, if you're willing to donate anything. I'm gonna put our club's email in the chat if anybody wants to reach out. We'd really appreciate any donations. You know, you don't have to, but it's great to show a lot of perspectives, you know? So thank you.
I'm so
I also, sorry.
At a young age around art, like again, like I'm still trying to search for that, you know? I wish, you know, yeah, that's why I ended up at the point. It's like, where are these museums, you know? How do we create these gallery spaces? I love that you guys are thinking about that in that setting. Again, I went up to New Paltz a couple weeks back to see the show, and I mean, it's amazing to see, you know, all the young people in there, you know, and it brought me back to the 90s when I used to go up there to hang out. And, you know, again, like, we need to see more of this. And I love your buildings. I know you have part of your campus, you guys have a whole section that's dedicated again to movements, you know, and that's so unique and so powerful. So whatever we can do to support, you know, your ability to build out your museum, let us know. I would love to contribute to that. But thank you for doing that way, and thank you for thinking that way. Yeah. There just needs to be more. I could only imagine the power of having a museum that reflects you and your community in a setting like New Paltz, where you can kind of get away and reflect a little bit more, and use it again for your academic knowledge. I mean, that's so powerful. So congratulations on that, and again, let us know how we can support it. You know. So.
And so
I just wanted to add one thing. So it was mentioned earlier how we're preserving people's stories from these communities, and it reminded me of the gentrification that's going on in my community. Like I live by Yankee Stadium, and like 2 or 3 years ago, they opened a Starbucks and a Chipotle right next to each other by Yankee Stadium. And I've lived in this area forever. And all of a sudden, there's a Chipotle and a Starbucks. And you never saw that unless you went down to the city, down to Manhattan. So it's almost like Hunts Point is like a train ride away from me. It's like so it hits close to home, like to preserve these stories from my neighborhood, my area. Um, it almost like I'm intrigued to like what would happen if I was to go out right now with my phone and ask people like down the block, like, hey, like what's going on? Like, what's your story, right? Because um, who knows what I'll learn, you know, and you know, to preserve my community as well. So I really appreciate the work that you do. Yeah.
Thank you. So definitely check that out. There's so many amazing Mexican restaurants in the Bronx. I don't know what the hell Chipotle is doing here, and I don't know how they get business.
Right.
Those people, man, like they suck, man. I'm sorry, yo. Like we got a bunch of dope spots out here.
How could you be in the Bronx and go to Chipotle? That is
Yeah, bro, like,
shocking.
I can get a cafecito for $1, man. What the hell Starbucks? Like, I'm gonna give you $5 if I can get it for $1, bro. Like, but again, it's that, and you know, and be noticeable, like, because you know, you guys are in an academic setting, and what ends up happening is that, you know, what used to happen, and I'm thinking it's changing now a little bit, is that we used to go to college and we used to tell you, go to college, get the hell out. You know, you want that $5 Starbucks coffee, go buy it. You know, like you earned that. And that's bullshit. You know, we know that. You know, that doesn't do nothing for anybody. So I'm glad you're hip to that. Because I think in the 90s, if the Chipotle would have showed up to our block, you know, and Starbucks would have showed up to our block, we'd have been like, yeah, this is dope. You know, it's all great. I can spend my $5 on, you know, on fancy coffee. I'm with it. I'm cool now, you know. And I'm glad you're hip to that, because I think that that's like very, very important. That's the one thing that's going to keep Starbucks and Chipotle maybe just on that Yankee Stadium block, hopefully, you know, because it needs to cater to baseball fans or whatever. But then beyond that, it doesn't get very far. Hopefully, that's the thought. But you know where we are now.
If I could,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if I could just speak to the young people who are in the room. There was a comment earlier about being discouraged by who's controlling the narrative. And as someone who in their 20s was not at ICP at the point, now that I helped to coordinate that program, not having community, you know, it definitely was difficult to think that I could be in any kind of spaces. But my call to you is that this is not the time to be discouraged. This is the time to be encouraged and to band together, and you're all stronger together. You know, find those people who, you know, think and feel as you do, and, you know, continue to increase your relationships with them. You know, make community projects, work together, collaborate, find new ways to tell the story. You know, break barriers that way. Because, you know, regardless of the fact of who controls the narrative now, you know, your voice is still needed. And if you don't do the work, no one else will.
That's right. Abigail knows. You know, she's here too.
Word.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And again, you know, we're lucky we get to, you know, people like Abigail find us and find a home in our space, because this is where we are. And, you know, we built this alternative reality where sometimes you walk out of here, you're like, what the hell's going on here? Like, that's not real. Like, we built such an alternative reality, you know, for ourselves that's like very utopian, but very like real and very, again, centered around like what we need, that sometimes like when you hear stuff like that, it doesn't even, like, it's very radical, you know, like what she said is very radical, you know, and to us it's like, boom. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you for spitting that out there. That's dope.
Well, isn't that what we're doing every day? You know, we see about our ICP at the point has been around since Danny was a kid. It's going on 20-some, it's more than 20 years at this point. And so we're seeing 100, 150 kids per year, you know, learning the art of photography and learning the importance of telling their own story. And, you know, I feel like the change in the culture today has a lot to do with these kind of programs all across the United States and communities like ours, you know, where we're taking back the narrative, you know, so don't give up.
Yes, own it.
And isn't that what's so great about the Museo Escolar too, is that it's like so much of what the power needs to control is either pitting people against each other, not allowing communities to form, or trying to make them assimilate, like go to Chipotle and eat, you know? And so like that like is this student club, which you're self-selecting to be part of, right? You're not like getting paid to do this or anything, is about that forming that community. And so it just makes me so inspired to see you all and how smart you are and how like engaged you are with each other and with the campus. And so anyways, you are an inspiration to us, I think, also, I would say, right? So thank you for being that.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you. I feel, oh my bad. I feel like Museo Escolar, along with a lot of other cultural programs on campus, you know, seek to find our own perspective that we want to, like, you know, bring awareness to, because there's like other clubs, you know, that bring represent Latin America. There's other clubs that represent the Caribbean. You know, Museo Escolar tries to combine it, and we bring our own take on it. So like we're able to do that, you know, with our annual fashion show, with our programs. You know, unfortunately, I feel like it's just COVID. It's limiting us a lot because we rely on community a lot, like being in the same space, talking and relying on each other. So that's something difficult right now, especially right now when we're being fed a lot of negativity. It's a lot of violence porn. It's just like a lot of words, you know, somebody died, somebody's been murdered, you know, rights has been like taken away from, you know, us, like feeling for the LGBTQ community, like the Latinx Black community. Like there's just so much psychological just bashing, like, and it's meant to push us down. But, you know, as, you know, people of color just do, we fight through it, you know, and that's our strength. And cultural clubs like ours on campus, I feel like it's something great. And I'm so glad I found this. I found, you know, interest in this keeps me going. You know, I know a lot of like-minded people like Tiana, Saul. We talk about certain things, you know, because we care about them. You know, we're not over there, we're not overseas, but we really care about it because we resonate with it, and we keep going because it's something we believe in, you know?
That's dope.
Woo!
Yeah, let's go. Thank you.
Good for the salve for the soul, y'all. Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much, Tiana, Jasmine, Saul, all the other members of Museo Escolar. Thank you, Juanita, for curating. Thank you, Abigail, for being here. Thank you, Ron at Foco. Anyways, this was great.
MIT in Colombia in the house too. Everybody's here today, man.
Hey.
Yeah, you have some fans from the point there. So it was a great conversation, and it's so refreshing to come here today to get away from whatever's going on and see such inspiring conversation. So this was great. I had my camera off because I was on my way to get my son from school, and I didn't want you to see me moving around, but it was so wonderful to hear young voices framing this conversation and asking these questions to Danny and hearing your story. So thank you so much for organizing this, Tiana, Saul, and Jasmine. Thank you. And Danny. Thank you, Museo Escolar. Great. I'll be in touch with you guys.
Come pay a visit. I'm gonna you guys got my thing. I'm gonna throw my phone number in here if anything. You guys are.
You'll have to come to the Bronx, guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw my. I might not pick up right away because it might be, but send me a text. Hit me up. Say, yo, I'm in the hood. You know, I'm gonna take you on a walk, and we'll show you some art out here. You know what I'm saying? And we'll hook you up too, catch you up to speed. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it, bro. This was good.
Thank you all for coming and taking the time out your day. We really enjoyed this. We really appreciate you just showing up here and sharing, you know, your thoughts and questions. Like, very much appreciated.
Good one. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, guys.
All right, y'all. I'm gonna end it.
All right, bye. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.